You only have your thoughts and dreams ahead of you. You are someone. You mean something. Batman. Hey, you crazy kids, and welcome to Voices in My Closet, the show that you listen to while you're folding laundry. I hope you all had a nice past 2 weeks. Yes, it's been another 2 weeks since an episode, for good reason. I guess you can decide whether or not it was a good reason, but I have been re-watching / binge-watching all of the Marvel superhero movies in preparation for, as I'm sure all of you know, Avengers Infinity War, which premiered this past week, and it's one of the biggest crossovers in cinematic history, and you know it's big because the budget is ridiculous, and the effects are also ridiculous. Today, I plan on seeing it. I plan on seeing it later tonight. I've been avoiding spoilers like the plague, so don't post any spoilers until tomorrow. But still, don't post spoilers because that's not very nice for the people who have not seen it yet. But I'm wearing my Captain America shirt specifically for the occasion, #TeamCap, and it's also very fitting because today happens to be National Superhero Day. So happy National Superhero Day to all of you. If you don't celebrate, I'm sorry, and if you didn't know it existed until just now, you're welcome. I'm glad that I could teach you something. I try to do that in every episode, and I probably don't succeed in any episodes until today. So, yay. I wanted to talk today about superhero culture and how it has evolved over the years and how it has sort of shaped society on a political level even, but also how it has been able to shape people on a more personal and emotional level. So we're going to take a quick time travel trip back to the earlier 1900s. Comics really started gaining ground in the 1930s, and this was when cinema was still in its very early stages. Comics could portray a level of fantasy that cinema couldn't even dream of at the time. There was still special effects weren't really a thing. Television wasn't a thing either, and you had radio serials, but they only had the audio component. There wasn't so much visual. You had to sort of be imaginative with that. But with comics, you had the visual, you had the dialogue, and they served as a more affordable form of entertainment, especially for kids, but they were also used in marketing strategies for the events that were happening during that time. And this was during the war in the 1930s that these started gaining ground. And the first comic superheroes actually came out around 1933, 1935. You had the Shadow and the Phantom, who were both Batman-esque type characters. They were masked superhero, self-made superheroes, no superpowers, but they were crime fighters and detectives, and they solved problems. They solved like real-world problems, and these sort of paved the way for the characters who became Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman and Captain America and Captain Marvel. All these characters who had completely different personas, they had different powers and abilities, they came from different backgrounds, but they were all created to serve one purpose, and that was to fight evil. Captain America specifically, who is actually my favorite superhero, he was used as a mascot of sorts for the war effort. He was kind of like that Uncle Sam, that whole, I want you to enlist in the U.S. Army, or whatever those propaganda posters might have said. He was meant to portray the values that people had during the war era. This was the golden age. 1938 time was around the time that these characters came about, and this was also around the time of the Great Depression and of World War II. So Captain America was the guy who was punching Adolf Hitler in the face, and people also saw him as a patriotic symbol, a mascot who, in the movies, he is seen as a very humble person who wants to solve things in a very peaceful way. He's not about violence to end violence. He's about just peaceful resolution in general, which is what everybody was hoping for with the war. And whether it was for patriotism or for freedom or for the greater good, all of these things sort of became combined with these superheroes and their values in order to reflect our own. But fast forward a little bit, after World War II, these kids weren't so much into these comic books anymore because these superheroes, they didn't necessarily look up to these superheroes anymore because the World War II was over and there wasn't much reason for these characters. They weren't as relevant. So in the 60s and 70s, you had comic book creators come up with the concept of anti-heroes. Like you had Wolverine and you had Iron Man and Deadpool. These characters who were supposed to be more relatable to people. They had more traumatic, they were more tragic, they had more traumatic backstories. Even for Batman, we didn't get his origin story until several years after his creation. We found out that he was orphaned as a young boy because his parents were killed. And we see that these characters have to deal with loss on a level that is very similar to ours, where they do have these powers and abilities that we could never only dream of having. They were very raw and very real, ironically. So these anti-heroes became more relatable to us, and the comics became more aimed towards teens and young adults. They weren't just for kids anymore. And aside from relating to people on a personal level, comics were also able to tackle issues that were more political and more government-based. Superheroes transcend politics, and when I say that, I mean that superheroes are able to metaphorically cross national and social and geopolitical borders in order to solve issues of race and gender and religion and culture, all these different things that we are constantly facing on a regular basis. And that's what makes superheroes so timeless. The fact that these issues have been prevalent for hundreds of years, they become even more prevalent because the media covers them a lot more often. And we see how superheroes are able to overcome these issues time and time again, whether it's political or whether it's personal. And we see the idea of having the power and the strength to overcome these adversaries, whether they're inner adversaries, inner demons, or issues out in the world. And we also see the idea of knowing right from wrong, understanding what's good and what's bad. And other than transcending these borders, they transcend time. That's why they're timeless. And they're always coming up with new stories and new problems to sort of relate to the problems that we are facing, even the new problems that come up in the world, in government and in politics. With superheroes, it's not like a TV show that runs for 5 seasons, kind of gets stale. There's not really much room for new stories. With comic books, you can go back in time, you can go forward in time, you can go to new dimensions and new universes, introduce new characters and problems. They're always fresh, and you can completely erase timelines. You can be like the X-Men Days of Future Past movie, where all of the previous movies were pretty much erased from the timeline. And in order to start fresh, things can be started fresh and new. There's always something new to bring to the table with superheroes, and they, other than all of the political issues that they face with us, we're also able to see how they are very human. We see their alter egos, who are just these mild-mannered people who have similar problems just like we do. Maybe they're isolated from society, and that's another issue with people being shunned from society due to their differences, due to their race or their identity. And we see that today, and we see how our superhero characters are able to deal with these issues and find out that their abilities don't necessarily define them. It's how they use their abilities. And they learn how to grow up and find something new, find a new purpose in themselves, growing up and discovering all of these responsibilities, like Spider-Man, who learned from his uncle that with great power comes great responsibility. As you continue to grow, you're going to face more and more issues that really hit home for you, and you have to learn to take responsibility and find a way to solve these problems, to overcome these challenges, and to not let them drag you down. Don't let your past define you. Don't let all of these issues that you're facing define you. Show that you can overcome them and be stronger. So That's sort of the how they're able to relate to all of us, both in government and politics, and also on a personal level. And with superhero origin stories, there tends to be an algorithm to explain how characters become the way that they are. There's three different life-altering experiences that sort of give us an idea of superhero origin stories. And the first one is trauma, which I did mention earlier, with characters like Batman, who lost his parents at a young age, and Iron Man, who lost his parents at a young age. And these characters who face anxiety and depression, but they are able to overcome these demons, or at least live with them, while turning themselves into self-made heroes, into self-made people who seek a bigger purpose, who discover that there is more to the world. It's not just revolving around them and their little problem. They don't pity themselves, and we can empathize with these people because some of these issues that they face are very relatable to ourselves. Some of us have bad upbringings, or we have some sort of disability, whether it's on a small scale or a larger scale. And we see that they're able to overcome them. And that's supposed to be more encouraging to us, to show that we can overcome something if we put our minds to it, if we find that inner strength. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical strength. It can be that inner strength, that inner confidence. And other than trauma, you also have the idea of destiny, characters who were destined for greatness, like Wonder Woman or Thor, who were sort of born into the powers that they were given. And also characters who get their powers just by sheer chance, whether they're being bitten by a radioactive spider or they're exposed to a bunch of gamma radiation and turned into big green anger machines. So it's different for these three different types of life experiences. And while we don't necessarily relate to all of them on the same level, there is a chance that we can relate to each of them, in that some of them come from humble beginnings and they become something greater, or they learn these great life lessons. The arrogant characters who become humbled through different experiences that they have, and they discover their powers and they learn the responsibilities that they have to protect other people. They don't care just about themselves. They learn how to be respectful and to acknowledge the fact that the entire world is facing issues that need to be solved by someone who is super, and someone who is willing to sacrifice themselves and in order to make the world a better place. And these characters, I keep saying this, but I want to keep saying it. They're very relatable, and the idea that they have talents that nobody knew that they had, and there are plenty of people like us who have these talents, who sort of isolate ourselves from society. We feel isolated, we feel alienated sometimes, but we also have abilities that people don't know about, and they're not going to know about it unless we use these abilities. We show people our knowledge and our skills and our talents that can make us better people, and can in turn make other people better, to improve the lives of others. And whether we come from tragic backgrounds or whether we've always had a happy life, we can still relate to these superheroes, and the fact that they are all so different. You don't have to necessarily choose one superhero and assume that this superhero is the same as all of the others, because they all come from different backgrounds. They all have a different upbringing. They could have started out as very humble, or maybe they were rich and arrogant, but they all sort of came together in a sense that they had life lessons to learn, much how we always have life lessons to learn. We have these amazing abilities, and we, again, like Batman says, it's not our powers, or it's not who we are that defines us, it's our actions. And I'm probably butchering that a little bit. But when we see the superheroes portrayed in movies, the actors and actresses, sometimes we know some of these people in real life have suffered from some kind of traumatic loss, or they came from a bad place. But it's very encouraging to see them become these bigger people, and sort of fill the shoes of a role model that, if we just looked at their past, we would not expect them to be able to do that, be able to serve as as an example to people who aspire to be better people, who aspire to be super on a more human level. So it's very encouraging to know that people do have the ability to change in that way. And I think I'll stop there. I'll stop on that note. But I want to ask all of you who your favorite superheroes are, who your favorite superhero is and why. And also, what kind of superpowers do you want? I know this is on a less deep level, but I'm really curious to know. My chosen superpowers would be either speed, teleportation, or flight. I think all of them have to do with travel, because I really just need to be able to get to places faster, and because I'm always late. That's my issue. But let me know if you were one of those bandwagon people who sort of jumped into the comic universe once the movies became big, or if you've been reading comics all of your life. I'm one of the bandwagon people with the movies, but this did encourage me to go back and find out more about these comic book stories. I'd love to hear, though, how all of you got started, if you did get started. If not, if these movies have just served as entertainment or not even that, then that's okay too. But for me, I think that a lot of the characters and their issues, they have resonated with me and other people that I know on a more personal level, and it's amazing to see that. It's amazing to see that while they are fictional, they are still, ironically, very real and raw, both the actors and the characters themselves. So thank you for watching. I hope you all have a great week. If you go see Infinity War, I hope you enjoy it. I will see you all next week.